Next up, I'd love to welcome Al Gill, who is a keen member of the Alpine Club and wants to do some science, some citizen science, and a small dream led to a project, is it high-level routes between Chamonix and Zermatt, or there or thereabouts. I look forward to hearing about it. Al, please take to the stage. Thank you very much. Thank you.
A lot of hungover faces. Hi, I'm Al. I led my first expedition last year, HLR 22. Unlike the rest of the speakers, I haven't got decades of expedition experience, not a glaciologist, not a professional geographer. So basically, pretty much like you guys, I have the biggest sense of imposter syndrome in the world right now, so interesting. However, just going to set the scene with a little video. We originally wanted to film the expedition. We couldn't, but the video is quite instructive. I will set the scene for you.
Earth is changing, and not for the better. The media paints a dark future. But there is hope. Is the answer buried in the snow? In 1862, members of the world's first Alpine Club pioneered a high-altitude route between Chamonix in France and Zermatt in Switzerland. 160 years later, we're going back to see if it's still possible. Only there's a problem. These remote regions of the Alps are no longer untouched. Climate change in the Alps is 0.5 degrees centigrade ahead of the global average, making these mountains a canary in the mine for global warming. Glaciers are smaller, seasons are coming earlier, the ice that helps hold the mountains together is melting, releasing rockfalls and landslides. But environmental change isn't just about global warming. The Alps are changing in other ways. In 2019, microplastics were found for the first time in an alpine glacier. So, whilst we're up there, we'll be taking samples to see what sorts of plastics they are and where they come from. We'll also be talking to local people to see what this means for them, and to green tech companies to see what can be done about it. The world has changed a lot in the 160 years since the Alpine Club first traversed this route. What will our world look like in 160 years' time? That's up to us. That's why we're going back. We hope you'll join us.
Okay, so just to summarize, we had 3 objectives on our trip. Can we retrace the Victoria mountaineering route? Can we show everybody what it looks like? We took a professional photographer, professional artist along with us, and we also wanted to do some science. So journey with 3 purposes, count them. Let me give you some context. So this is our theater of operations. We're between Switzerland, Italy in the south, France in the west. And in terms of route, our target route is the line in red. The 59 to 62 route is the line in green, slightly more towards Italy. On the right, you've got Zermatt and Matterhorn. On the left, you've got, I can't see it from here, you've got Mont Blanc and Chamonix. And you've got the Val d'Entremont in between with the St. Bernard Pass and some very nice coffee at the bottom. So that's enough scene setting. On with some adventure. One Sunday last June, we converged on Zermatt, walked up to the Schönbiel hut. It was extremely hot. It was really unpleasant. This is us in front of the hut with Matterhorn in the background, slightly different view. As you can see, we were a large group, and one of the great things about having a large team, if you're doing a scientific expedition, is that you can share the kit out between you. Makes it much lighter to carry. It also meant we could travel in ropes of 3 on a glacier. Utterly fantastic, safer than 2, not as really irritating as 4 or 5. We did some last-minute training. This is James on the left doing some very professional ice axe breaking, boulders on the right with some slightly more flamboyant breaking. We also took our first sample. So this is Katie, one of the Hong Kongers, taking the first microplastic sample on the, this is actually an ice cap, not a glacier, so there wasn't much crevasse danger, which is why she's unroped. And this is us on the way back down. So we just stopped to put on some more sun cream, and behind us, that is the Stuckey Glacier, which is what we were going to go up the following day. And at times, I have a bad habit of going into really full-on, boring professor mode. I'm sorry. There is a quiz later, by the way. However, I was just doing my little spiel about the importance of starting early when you're doing alpine mountaineering. The whole point of an alpine start is that the snow bridges are still frozen, so you can cross them, the seracs don't fall over, and the rocks are all nice and secure, don't fall on your head. About 30 seconds after this picture was taken, the front of the glacier fell off. That was a bit unnerving. And it wasn't in the project plan either. Anyway, so what was going on? Well, there are basically three things. Firstly, average snowfall. This is average snowfall in Cermak. You've got the depth in centimeters on the left, year on the bottom. 2021-22, well below the average. Second thing that was going on is there'd been an enormous heat wave starting in June, carrying on. So this is a satellite image. It's the really dark, hot area in the middle. That's where we were. And of course, this is all going on against the background, the long-term trend of climate change in general. So these are satellite images, 2016, 18, 2022. The white stuff is snow, and as you can see, wasn't a lot last year, which was a bit of a pain. But what did it actually mean for us? I mean, what does it mean in practice? In other words, what does climate change look like up there? Well, obvious thing is the glaciers are receding. That's not news anymore. Everybody knows that. Hopefully everybody in here knows that. Slightly less obvious, things like meltwater on top of glaciers. That's actually the Trion Glacier, which we had to paddle across at one point, which was, entertaining in boots. But various things make this meltwater process worse. And the reason it's important, as Rachel alluded to, is the water gets down through the crevasses and the moulins underneath the glacier and kind of lubricates it, makes it travel down the mountain faster, can really speed it up. So various things make this water process worse. One is, just an example, so red algae, they live on the surface of the glacier. Because they're darker than the snow, they don't reflect the sun's rays as well. That warms up the ice, and you get meltwater. Same kind of deal with things called cryoconite holes. So dust, organic matter, just blows onto the glacier, lands on it. It's darker, again, doesn't reflect the sun's rays as well, so warms up the glacier, you get water. And suddenly you get bacteria, bugs, all sorts of things living on these dark spots, kind of bug condominiums, if you like. And it speeds up the glacier down the mountain. But for a mountaineer, somebody who climbs, the most insidious, nerve-wracking thing is permafrost. So basically, I mean, in the good old days, so 20-odd years ago, some of you are probably under 20, aren't you? Crikey. So in the good old days, the top of the mountain was frozen, never got above freezing, and the mountains were held together to a certain extent by the permafrost. Now the permafrost is melting, so's the mountain, basically, which results in rockfall coming down on your head. We've got all sorts of, we've even got a little bit of video, but just an example, that's the adjacent to the Les Chaux Glacier. That dust is the remnant of the rockfall. The rockfall is the thing that can kill you. That was the scary thing. So, the glacier we were going to go up had just fallen apart. What are we going to do? This was the hardest decision on the expedition for me, but remember our three objectives. Can we still do the route? Well, guess what? It's day one. We've already answered question one, so I'm going to count that as a win. It was going to be tricky. But the other two objectives, can we show you what environmental change looks like, and can we do the microplastic stuff? Yeah. So what we decided to do was carry on. We would go around where we had to. We would get as close to the original route as we could without killing ourselves, and we would carry on doing the science. But that didn't mean we couldn't have a little bit of adventure. So let me share you very rapidly, because otherwise Shane will start shooting at me. Let me share just one day on the expedition. So this is, we wanted to get from here, the Trion, Cabane du Trion, to the Argentière hut down here. Needed to go across the Trion Glacier, over the col, round the Salena Glacier, over the Col du Chardonnay, down the valley, round in time for tea and medals. Had to start early to make sure everything was nice and cold. Anyway, 4 a.m. start. This is us on the glacier, roping up, down on the glacier, roped up within 5 minutes. All that training in Wales paid off, watched by sheep usually. We started off across the Trion Glacier. This is a picture in the daylight, just so you can see. Despite the fact it's a fairly gentle, bowl-shaped glacier, it actually has a lot of really monstrous crevasses in there. So yeah, crossing that at night was interesting. Anyway, about 5 a.m., it's still dark. I'm leading the front rope across the glacier. It's going pretty well, slow, monotonous progress, heading towards the col. And we're actually making pretty good time. Until I stepped off into the void. I was just thrown back, looking down between my knees into this blackness, which was a bit unnerving. The thing about crevasse falls is usually, I mean, the usual thing, you just put your foot in and whoops. But most of them you can stop. If you've got a good team, they will give you a quick tug on the rope and you're fine. So thank for all the training. Actually, it was Zoe, who's in the audience here, who saved me going in any deeper. But that was, yeah, training paid off. It's quite intense leading across the glacier in the dark. Any moment the ground can just disappear. It's even more intense when you've just almost gone in and you then have to get up and carry on. But we arrived at the col 5 minutes before dawn, exactly when we wanted to be there. You have no idea how good I felt there, hence the somewhat embarrassing photo there, and Robin, another team member, in the same position. And then we peeked over the other side down to the Salena Glacier. A little bit dark, but you can see roughly where we are. Now, at this stage, we didn't know exactly what to expect. Some years you can just scramble down, walk down a slow slope, you're on the glacier. Other years, a bit of an abseil, not too challenging. So Richard and I went down a little way just to have a quick look. The route was totally bare. No snow, no ice, just loose rock. Pretty grim. It was also about 200 meters, which is not a small scramble and then a walk down a snow slope. So we ended up having to climb down in relays one at a time, because with that much loose rock, you are going to kick some down. The bottom we sheltered behind this sort of rock bluff just above the Bergschrund. But, spoiler alert, we made it. So that's the col up there. We came down this route there, and, oh, actually, you can see our tracks at this scale. It's great. Came down to the glacier. So we made it. However, that descent had taken a long time, and we knew we had to get over the second col. So we needed to get a real wiggle on if we were going to make it. The descent had been perfect, but it had cost us time. So off we went across the glacier, came around the corner, and we saw this. So, yeah, we've been hearing rockfall, snowfall for a while. Having come down the first col, we were pretty certain we'd have to climb up something similar to get to the second one. It wasn't going to be a nice ascent up a snow slope. So, you also didn't like the look of that. You see the debris there. We also saw some rock fall the other side. So discretion, valor, quite like my glass of something at the end of the day. Plan Bravo, we're going to head down to the Salena hut, which is in the other direction along the glacier. So we headed off. Conditions, though, were a bit weird. Route wasn't what we expected. A bit challenging. So we divided the party. We got radios. So one rope went one way, one rope went the other. I managed to get my rope down gradually steeper ice slopes, so a bit interesting, but you know. And we got to the moraine, and we turned around, and we looked back to see this. So this is a fairly steep snow slope. It was incredibly slippy at that stage because it had been in full sun all morning. Richard on the back did an amazing job. He was short roping some of the team at the time, which was very impressive. But as an expedition leader, this is the last thing you want to see. I'm standing at the bottom. There's nothing I can do. Why is it not me up there and not them? But they made it, hence some very happy smiles. That's Richard on the left, who was short roping and getting the other guys down. James is smiling because he was on my rope and he didn't have to do that. There we go. They made it. Anyway, what was the outcome of the expedition? Remember, the first objective, is the route still viable? Well, no. Not a snowball in hell's chance. I hope that we'd be able to just squeak through and I'd come back and I'll be able to tell you, you know, you can do it, but go now, because the glacier, yeah. And it's done on foot in summer. In the 1860s, they were doing it in August, September. We were in June, July, and still couldn't do it. Other objectives, the art. So we had both an artist and a photographer with us. James, the artist on the left, he's based in New York, works mostly in charcoal, pencil, also teaches drawing online, actually. You can see more about him there. Zoe, our photographer, she's in the audience down at the front. She's also an ultra-marathon runner. And was carrying an epic weight of camera gear, but was not the slowest person in the party. That was me. But yeah, so very impressive people. Anyway, when we got back, some of the people who helped us with the video earlier, who were very professional, extremely helpful, put us in touch with an outfit called the Lunar Codex. So that's run by an ex-NASA engineer turned entrepreneur. And the objective of this project is to put an archive of contemporary art onto the moon. It's part of NASA's Artemis program. And I thought about this, we're never going to manage that. This is just us. But Zoe and James worked hard, put together a portfolio, and we sent it off. Didn't hear anything for a while. And then we got this email saying, congratulations, you've been accepted. We've allocated you on a slot. There are 4 missions involved, going to the lunar South Pole. It's fantastic, because the artist he also acts as a polar guide occasionally, so he was well stoked. Last objective, the science, that I find really interesting. Remember, our goal was to sample surface snow, which could be measured, and then that would let you infer stuff about the atmospheric nano and microplastics. Bit of a problem, not much snow. This is the Atema Glacier, and below about 3,100 meters or so, there was no snow. It was just a really long, slow, tedious slog down the ice, crampons all day, not fun. However, whereas we aimed for 50 sample sites originally, even with not much snow, we got just over 25, and this is a map of samples, so the colored dots, the reds and the purples, the last year's trip and the recce trip put together. So we did get some samples, and they showed some quite interesting things. Let me just briefly outline how the sampling works. I've got some props. So your lead person, which is James, goes forward, puts on some blue nitrile gloves, and grabs a sample pot, dunks it in the snow, collects it. Really simple field work. You've got to avoid some screw-ups like contaminating with plastic, because the ropes are plastic, but hey, not complicated. You also need to take a controlled sample. This is ultra pure water. Had to take 2 of these in case we drop one in a crevasse or something embarrassing. Adds the weight. And then the second person on the rope basically records everything. Waterproof notebook, good old school technology, just like, so that coordinates atmospheric pressure, all that kind of thing. So not a complicated process for those of you who are looking for some interesting field work. So results. Is it this microplastic, nanoplastic in the atmosphere? Is it tires, toothpaste, or textiles? Well, perhaps, unsurprisingly, I'm not sure, just like on the ground, most of what we saw was tire plastics. Okay, fine. Next in the queue was polystyrene. Interestingly, for climbers, mountaineers, the green, that's polypropylene, so that's what your RAB kit, your Patagonia kit is made of. We were expecting to see quite a lot of that just shed from mountaineers. Not so much. The lab that we were working with, which is the Helmholtz Institute in Leipzig, they've done some basic work on the sizing, and it turns out that the tire plastics tend to generally be much bigger particles, and the polystyrene one's really tiny, so nanoplastics rather than micro, about 1,000 times smaller. This, not entirely all of it published yet, but the lab is now, our lead scientist he's got his own research group there, so he's got lots of new toys, and we're running it through the new kit. So watch the journals. Wasn't a totally straightforward story though. So these are just some selected samples along the bottom. As I said, tire plastics, polystyrene mostly. Couple of weird points though, and this was actually adjacent to the col that I was telling you about earlier, and above the Les Chaux Glacier near the Grand Jurasse, so not really heavily trafficked regions, but you're seeing PET, you're seeing polyprop. Yeah, not totally clear what's going on, so there is more to learn. Now, I always said I'd only do one, I wasn't intending to do more than one expedition, but it just kind of seems like I can't rest from travel. So, embarrassingly, HLR22 was at the time, it was the widest area survey of micro and nanoplastics. But really, if you think about it, if you're concerned about plastics, you're wanting to understand the global plastic cycle, and you think that atmospheric transport is the dominant mechanism, what you want is a global view of this plastic cycle. So you want you want to get a bit more ambitious. So in 2024, 2025, we're going to get a little more ambitious. I don't have time to tell you too many more details. A little thing on South Georgia, Shackleton Route, and some other things in the Himalaya, the Ruwenzori Mountains. But if anybody wants to help me save the world, come and talk to me later. Thank you.